I didn't plan to come out on my 21st birthday. Actually, if you'd asked me that morning, I would have told you I'd probably wait another year, maybe longer. Just until things felt safer, easier, less risky. But life doesn't really care about your timing. And neither did Garrett. Started like every cliché college birthday ever. Loud music. Too many people packed into a house that definitely couldn't hold them. Red cups everywhere. Someone yelling from the kitchen. Someone already throwing up in the bathroom. And me standing in the middle of it all, pretending I wasn't counting how many drinks it would take to finally say something I'd been hiding for years. Garrett was the one who dragged me there. "Come on, man," he'd said earlier that night, tossing me one of his shirts because apparently mine was too depressing for a 21st. "You only turned 21 once. We're doing this right." That was Garrett. Always loud, always confident, always pulling me into things I wasn't sure I wanted but somehow never regretted. We'd been best friends since we were kids. Same street, same school, same everything. He was the kind of guy everyone liked without trying. Tall, athletic, stupidly charming, and painfully, undeniably straight. At least, that's what I told myself. By midnight, I was already a few drinks in. Not wasted, but enough that the edges of my thoughts felt softer, looser. Garrett had his arms slung around my shoulders, yelling over the music. "Birthday boy, you still alive?" "Barely?" I laughed, trying not to lean into him too much. But I did anyway. I always did. There was something about being close to him that made everything in my chest tighten in the best and worst way at the same time. "Good," he grinned, "because I've got something planned." That should have been my first warning. We ended up outside, in the backyard, where a bunch of people had gathered around a fire pit. Someone handed me another drink. Someone else started chanting my name. I didn't even realize what was happening until Garrett climbed up onto one of the chairs. "All right," he shouted, clapping his hands. "Isaac's officially 21, which means no more secrets." My stomach dropped. It was supposed to be a joke. Just drunk party nonsense. But then someone yelled, "Truth or dare?" And just like that, it turned into a game. I don't remember all the dares. Just flashes. Someone kissing a random stranger. Someone chugging something that definitely shouldn't have been chugged. Laughter. Phones out. People recording. And then, Isaac's turn. Of course it was. I should have picked dare. I always picked dare. But Garrett was looking at me. Not joking. Not laughing. Just watching. "Truth," I said. "Big mistake." The guy across from me smirked. "All right, birthday boy. What's the biggest secret you've never told anyone here?" The group went quiet in that way drunk crowds do when something suddenly gets real. I laughed it off at first. "Dude, that's not a fun question." "Come on," someone else said. "No backing out." I glanced at Garrett. He was still looking at me. But now there was something different in his expression. Something I couldn't read. "Unless you're scared," he added casually. That did it. Because yeah, I was scared. But not of them. Of him. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was the years of pretending. Or maybe I was just tired of hiding something that felt so obvious every time I looked at him. I let out a breath. My heart pounding so hard it actually hurt. "Fine," I said. And then, before I could stop myself, "I'm gay." Silence. Not the playful kind. The heavy kind. The kind where everything freezes for just a second too long. I could hear the fire crackling. Someone shifting their weight. A phone lowering. And then, "Oh, wait, seriously? No way." Voices started overlapping, but they all felt distant. Muffled. Like I was underwater. Because I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at Garrett. He hadn't moved. Not even a little. No reaction. No joke. No smirk. Just still. And for a split second, I thought I'd completely ruined everything. Years of friendship. Every late night talk. Every stupid inside joke. Gone. Just like that. I forced a laugh, trying to break the tension. "Yeah. So, surprise, I guess." A few people chuckled awkwardly. Someone said something supportive. Someone else clapped me on the back. But none of it mattered. because Garrett still hadn't said a word. "I'm gonna get some air," I muttered, already stepping back. No one stopped me. I walked through the crowd, past the music, past the lights, until I reached the side of the house where it was quieter, darker, safer, or at least it should have been. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, from the realization of what I'd just done. I leaned against the wall, dragging a hand through my hair. "Nice job, Isaac," I muttered to myself. Real smooth. I didn't know what I expected. Relief? Freedom? All I felt was dread, because the only reaction that mattered hadn't come yet. "You could have told me sooner." My breath caught. I didn't even hear him walk up. Garrett was standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking at me like he was trying to piece something together. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I know." He stepped closer, and for the first time all night, I felt nervous around him. Not the usual kind. Something deeper. He stopped right in front of me, close enough that I could see the shift in his expression. Close enough that my chest tightened again. "You really thought I'd care?" he asked. I swallowed. "It's not that I thought you'd care," I said. "I just didn't want to risk losing you." That hung in the air between us. And for a moment he didn't say anything. Then he did something that shocked me. Not just me. Everyone. But I didn't know that yet. Because the next thing Garrett did changed everything. Garrett didn't answer me right away. He just kept looking at me like he was trying to connect something that had been right in front of him this whole time, but he'd never actually seen it. And then he let out this quiet breath, almost like a laugh, but not really. "Isaac." He shook his head slightly. "You're an idiot." I blinked. "Wow, thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear right now." "I'm serious," he said, stepping even closer. "You really think this," he gestured vaguely between us, "was something you had to hide from me?" I looked away, jaw tightening. "You say that now." "No," he said firmly. "I would have said that 5 years ago." Something about the way he said it made my chest twist. Because I wanted to believe him. I really did. "But you don't get it," I muttered. "It's not just telling someone you're gay. It's everything that comes with it." "Like what?" "Like the chance they look at you differently after." He didn't hesitate. "I'm literally looking at you the same way I always have." I let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, that's kind of the problem." That slipped out before I could stop it. And the second it did, I felt it. That shift. Subtle but there. Garrett's expression changed. Not dramatically. Not in some big, obvious way. Just sharper. More focused. "What does that mean?" he asked quietly. My heart started pounding again. "Nothing," I said quickly. "Forget it." "Isaac." The way he said my name low, steady, made it impossible to ignore him. I sighed, rubbing my face. "It just means you've always looked at me like your best friend." "Because you are." "Yeah," I said. "Exactly." Silence stretched between us again. But this time it felt different. He didn't look confused anymore. Now he looked like he was thinking hard. "You had a crush on me." It wasn't a question. And somehow that made it worse. I let out a breath, staring at the ground. "Have?" I corrected quietly. Another silence. He didn't react right away. Didn't step back. Didn't laugh. Didn't say anything. And honestly, that was almost worse than any bad reaction I'd imagined. Because I had no idea what was going on in his head. "I didn't tell you because I knew it'd make things weird," I continued, forcing the words out before I lost my nerve. "And I didn't want that. I didn't want to lose this." I gestured between us again, even though I couldn't bring myself to look at him. "You're my best friend, Garrett. That matters more than why didn't you ever act on it?" I frowned, finally looking up at him. "Are you serious?" "Yeah. Because you're straight," I said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "And I'm not an idiot." He raised an eyebrow slightly. "Debatable," he muttered. Despite everything, I huffed out a short laugh. God, I hated how easy it still was to fall into that rhythm with him. But then he stepped closer again. Close enough that I instinctively straightened. You really never tried anything? He asked. No, I said immediately. Obviously. Not even when we were drunk? No. When we shared a bed that one time after the game? My brain short-circuited for a second. You mean when you passed out in 5 seconds and snored like a chainsaw? That's not the point. It kind of is. I shot back. You were unconscious, Garrett. I'm not a creep. I didn't say you were. Then what are you saying? He hesitated. And for the first time since he walked up to me, he looked unsure. He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. I don't know. I guess I'm trying to figure out why I never noticed. I stared at him. You didn't notice because I made sure you wouldn't. He looked back at me, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Yeah, he said slowly. I'm starting to realize that. Another pause, the kind that feels heavier the longer it goes on. And then, does it change anything? I asked quietly. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? Now that you know, I said. Are things different? That was the real question. The only one that actually mattered. Garrett didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, really looked at me, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. And I swear to God, my heart was about to beat out of my chest. Because there was something in his expression now, something I'd never seen before. No, he said finally. Relief hit me so fast it almost made me dizzy. Nothing's different, he added. I let out a shaky breath, nodding. Okay, good. That's good. Yeah. We both stood there for a second, neither of us moving. And then I forced a small smile. So, we're good. Garrett's gaze flicked down to my lips for just a second, then back up to my eyes. Yeah, he said again, but this time, it didn't sound the same, because the next thing he didn't match his words at all. Garrett said nothing had changed, but the way he was looking at me, that wasn't the same. Not even close. It was subtle at first. If I hadn't known him as well as I did, I probably would have missed it. But I did know him, better than anyone, and I could tell something shifted. His eyes dropped again, just for a second, to my lips, then back up, and that alone was enough to completely mess with my head. Garrett? I said slowly, my voice quieter now. What are you doing? Nothing, he answered. Too fast. Too automatic. I frowned. Yeah, no, that didn't sound convincing at all. He let out a short breath, like he was trying to steady himself. I'm just thinking. About what? He didn't answer. And that silence? That was worse than anything. Because now my brain was racing, filling in gaps, creating possibilities I had no business even considering. Look, I said, shaking my head a little. If this is weird, you can just say that. I get it. I knew it might be. It's not weird. His voice cut through mine. Firm, certain, and way too intense. I blinked. Okay. Then what is it? He hesitated again, then took another step closer. Now there was barely any space between us. I could feel the heat from his body, smell the mix of cologne and whatever he'd been drinking earlier. And suddenly, everything felt too real. I'm trying to understand something, he said. Yeah? What? He looked at me like he was about to say something important, something big, but instead, you've liked me this whole time? I exhaled slowly. Yeah. How long? I gave him a look. Does it matter? Yeah, he said quietly. It does. I hesitated, because saying it out loud made it feel permanent, real in a way I couldn't take back. But then again, I'd already crossed that line tonight. Might as well go all the way. Since we were like 16, I admitted. Garrett froze. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. 16, he repeated. Yeah, that's 5 years. Yeah, I said again, a little awkwardly. Another silence. But this one felt heavier, loaded, because now he knew, not just that I liked him, but how long I'd been carrying it. And you never said anything, he murmured. Nope, never did anything. No, not even when it was obvious? I frowned. It was never obvious. He huffed out a quiet laugh. Isaac, he said, shaking his head. Looking back, it kind of was. My stomach dropped. What? He stepped even closer. Now we were really close. Yeah, he said. I just didn't see it. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't say anything. I just stood there, stuck between wanting to step back and not being able to move at all. Garrett's gaze softened slightly. You really thought I'd freak out? He asked. I didn't know what you'd do, I admitted. That was kind of the problem. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I get that. For a second, things almost felt normal again. Like we were just talking, working through it, like friends. But then, his hand brushed mine. It was so light I could have convinced myself it was accidental. If he hadn't done it again. This time slower, more deliberate. My breath caught. Garrett. Relax, he said quietly. I am relaxed. No, you're not. He wasn't wrong. My entire body was tense, hyper-aware of every inch between us, of the way his fingers were now barely touching mine, like he was testing something, seeing how I'd react. This is a bad idea, I said, even though I didn't move my hand away. Why? Because you're not thinking straight. He smirked slightly. Pretty sure I am. Garrett. What? He cut in. I can't be curious? That word hit me harder than it should have. Curious. I swallowed. This isn't something you just experiment with, I said carefully. Why not? Because I'm not some test. That landed. I could see it in the way his expression shifted. The smirk faded. His hand stilled. I didn't mean it like that, he said. Then what did you mean? He hesitated. And for the first time since this started, he looked nervous. I don't know, he admitted. I just can't stop thinking about it now. Thinking about what? He held my gaze. You. My heart stopped. Actually stopped. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Garrett? I whispered. But I didn't know what I was going to say, because nothing about this made sense. You've been looking at me like that for years, he continued quietly. And I never noticed. That's kind of the point. Yeah, well, he stepped closer again, voice dropping. Now I do. And suddenly, the space between us was gone. I could feel his breath, see every detail in his eyes, feel my pulse pounding in my ears. This is exactly why I didn't tell you, I said under my breath. Why? Because now everything's different. He shook his head slightly. No, he said, but it is. And then, before I could finish that thought, Garrett did something that made my entire world flip upside down. He kissed me. Not a joke. Not a dare. Not a drunk mistake. A real kiss. And somewhere behind us, I heard someone gasp. Because apparently, we weren't as alone as we thought. For a second, I didn't react. Not because I didn't want to, but because my brain literally couldn't catch up with what was happening. Garrett was kissing me. Garrett, my best friend. The same guy I'd spent years pretending I didn't want. The same guy I'd convinced myself I could never have. And now, his lips were on mine. Warm, firm, real. My body froze, every instinct screaming that this shouldn't be happening. That this was a mistake. That he was drunk. That this would ruin everything. But then, he shifted slightly. And something about the way he did it, it wasn't careless. It wasn't sloppy. It wasn't random. It was intentional. That's what broke me. Because this wasn't some drunk accident. He meant to do it. My hand moved before I could think. Grabbing his shirt. Holding him there. And yeah, kissed him back. God, I kissed him back. Somewhere behind us, voices exploded. What the hell? Yo, are they? Bro? Laughter. Shouting. Someone dropping something. Phones definitely coming out. But none of that mattered. Not in that moment. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't wishing for it. I wasn't replaying some fake version of this in my head at 2 a.m. It was real. And it felt too good. Garrett pulled back first. Just slightly. Breathing a little heavier now. Eyes locked on mine. We didn't speak. We didn't move. We just looked at each other, like we were both trying to figure out what the hell we'd just done. I started, my voice barely working. You just kissed me. Yeah, he said. No hesitation. No regret. Just, yeah. I stared at him. You're straight. He didn't answer that right away. And that silence? That scared me. Garrett, I said more firmly. You're straight. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. I thought I was. That hit harder than the kiss. What does that mean? I asked. It means, he trailed off, glancing away for a second like he was trying to organize his thoughts. I don't know. He looked back at me. I've never felt like that before. My chest tightened. Like what? He hesitated. Then, like I wanted to do that. I didn't know how to respond to that, because part of me, the hopeful, stupid part, wanted to believe it meant something real. But the other part, the part that had spent years protecting itself, that part was already bracing for impact. This is a bad idea, I said quietly. Garrett frowned. Why do you keep saying that? Because you're figuring yourself out, I said. And I'm not. I stopped myself. But he caught it. You're not what? I swallowed. I'm not something you experiment with and then walk away from when you're done. That landed harder this time. He stepped back slightly. Not far. Just enough to actually look at me. I'm not using you, he said. You don't know that. I do. No, you don't. I snapped, frustration finally breaking through. Because you don't even know what you are right now. Silence. Heavy. Tense. The noise from the party started bleeding back in. People whispering. Watching. Definitely talking about us. Garrett glanced past me for a second. Then back. Let's get out of here. What? Come on, he said, already reaching for my wrist. We can't talk about this here. I hesitated. Because leaving with him, after that, felt like stepping into something I wasn't ready for. But at the same time, how the hell was I supposed to just go back to that party like nothing happened? Isaac, he said, softer now. Please. And that did it. Because he never said please. Not like that. I let out a breath. Okay. 5 minutes later, we were in his car. Neither of us speaking. The engine humming quietly as he pulled away from the house. From the noise. From everyone who had just seen what happened. My mind was spinning, replaying everything. The confession. The look on his face. The kiss. I glanced at him. His hands were tight on the steering wheel. Jaw set. Focused. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere quiet. That didn't exactly calm me down. A few minutes passed in silence before I finally said it. You just changed everything. He didn't look at me. I know. And you're not even freaking out. I am, he said. Just not in the way you think. I frowned. Then in what way? He exhaled slowly, then finally glanced at me. In a way where I can't stop thinking about doing it again. My heart slammed against my ribs. Garrett. But I didn't know what I was going to say. Because if he kept looking at me like that, I wasn't sure I'd be able to say no. The car stopped, but I didn't even notice where we were at first. My brain was still stuck on what he'd just said. I can't stop thinking about doing it again. Garrett killed the engine. Silence filled the space instantly. No music. No party noise. Just the faint ticking of the cooling car, and my heartbeat going absolutely insane. We're here, he said. I blinked, finally looking around. A quiet overlook. The one we used to come to in high school. Of course it was. Seriously, I muttered. You brought me here? He shrugged slightly. Figured it made sense. Because this is where we used to talk about normal things? Like school and girls. He smirked a little. Yeah. Well, guess things changed. That word again. Changed. I let out a breath, leaning back in my seat. Yeah, I said quietly. They did. Another silence. But this one wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Like we both knew we were standing on the edge of something we couldn't undo. Garrett turned slightly in his seat, facing me. Look, he said. I know this is a lot. That's one way to put it. I'm serious, he added. I'm not trying to mess with you. I know, I said. That's what makes this worse. He frowned. Worse? Yeah, I said, finally looking at him. Because if you were just being an idiot, I could brush it off. But you're not. He held my gaze. So what does that mean? I hesitated, because saying it out loud made it real. But I didn't really have a choice anymore. It means if I let myself go there with you, I said slowly, I'm not coming out of it okay if you decide this isn't for you. That hit him. I could see it. I wouldn't just, he started. You don't know that. I cut in. You've never been in this position before. He leaned back slightly, running a hand through his hair again. Frustrated now. I hate that you think I'd hurt you like that. I don't think you want to, I said. But that doesn't mean it won't happen. Silence again, because that was the truth. And we both knew it. I need to know something, I added. He looked at me. What? That kiss? I paused, steadying myself. Was that just because I said I liked you? He didn't answer right away. And that hesitation? That scared the hell out of me. I don't know, he admitted. I nodded slowly. Okay. That doesn't mean it didn't mean anything, he added quickly. But it means you don't understand it yet, I said. He exhaled. Yeah, I guess. I looked away, staring out at the dark city lights below, trying to ignore how much this was starting to hurt already. Isaac. I didn't respond. Look at me. I didn't want to, but I did anyway. He was closer now. I didn't even see him move. I meant what I said, he told me. I can't stop thinking about it. My chest tightened. Garrett. And not just the kiss, he continued, voice lower now. Everything. I froze. Everything. Yeah, he said. You. The way you look at me. My pulse spiked. I've been replaying it in my head since you said it, he admitted. Since you told everyone. I swallowed hard. That's not a good thing. It is for me. That wasn't the answer I expected. I shook my head slightly. You're just overwhelmed. Maybe, he said, but that doesn't change how it feels. And how does it feel? I asked quietly. He held my gaze. And for the first time, he didn't hesitate. Like I missed something, he said. My breath caught. Like what? Like I've been looking at you one way for years, he continued slowly. And now I can't go back to that. That hit deeper than anything else he'd said. Garrett. But again, I didn't know what to do with that. He moved closer. Close enough that I felt it immediately. That same tension from earlier. That same pull. You felt it too, he said. Of course I did, I replied, almost laughing. I've felt it for years. He shook his head. No, I mean just now. And yeah, I had that kiss. It wasn't one-sided. Not even close. That doesn't mean you feel the same way I do, I said. Then tell me not to do it again. My heart stopped. What? Tell me to stop, he said. Tell me this is a mistake. I opened my mouth, ready to say it, ready to shut this down before it got worse. But the words didn't come out, because he was looking at me like that again. And then, he leaned in, slower this time, like he was giving me a chance to pull away, to stop him. I didn't, and this time, the kiss was deeper, more certain, and somehow, even harder to walk away from. The second kiss hit differently, not just because it was deeper, but because this time, I knew what I was doing. There was no shock, no hesitation, no what the hell is happening moment, just choice, and I still didn't pull away. Garrett's hand came up to my jaw, steady but not forceful, like he was grounding himself just as much as me. And yeah, that scared me, because this wasn't messy. It wasn't careless. Felt real. I pulled back first this time, breathing harder than I wanted to admit. Shaking my head slightly like that would somehow reset everything. Okay, I said under my breath. Yeah. This is exactly what I didn't want to happen. Garrett didn't move away. If anything, he leaned closer again. Then why didn't you stop me? I let out a short, frustrated laugh. Seriously? Yeah. he said. You had the chance. I looked at him, really looked at him. You don't get to ask me that, I said quietly. Not after everything I just told you. That landed. He exhaled, nodding slightly. Yeah, that's fair. Silence settled again. But it wasn't the same as before. Now it felt like we'd crossed something. Something neither of us could undo. This is gonna mess everything up, I said. Garrett frowned. Or maybe it doesn't. I gave him a look. You cannot actually believe that. Why not? Because this isn't just some random thing, I said. This is us. That's exactly why it matters. I stared at him. You think kissing your best friend who's been in love with you for years isn't going to complicate things? His expression softened slightly at that. At least now I know, he said. That doesn't make it easier. It makes it honest. I didn't have a comeback for that. I didn't have a comeback for that. Because he wasn't wrong. It was honest. For the first time in years, everything between us was out in the open. No pretending. No hiding. No carefully avoiding certain thoughts, certain looks, certain moments. And somehow, that made it even harder. Honest doesn't mean easy, I said quietly. Garrett nodded. I know. Silence settled between us again. But this time, it wasn't tense. It wasn't awkward. It was real. I don't know what this is, he admitted after a moment. Yeah, I said. I figured. But I know it's not nothing. That made my chest tighten. Garrett. I mean it, he continued, leaning forward slightly. I'm not confused about that part. I searched his face, looking for hesitation, for doubt, for anything that would tell me this was temporary. But it wasn't there. What are you saying? I asked. He hesitated, just for a second. Then, I'm saying I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. My heart started pounding again. And then what? I asked. We just what? Start something? I don't know, he admitted. Maybe. I let out a breath, running a hand through my hair. That's not exactly reassuring. I'm trying to be honest, he said. I know, I said. But I need more than that. He frowned slightly. Like what? Like whether this is real for you, I said. Or just new. That hit him. I could see it. I don't have a perfect answer, he admitted. But I do know one thing. I waited. I don't want to lose you. That broke something in me. In a good way. In a terrifying way. Then don't do something you're not sure about, I said softly. He shook his head. Too late for that. I almost laughed. Because yeah, way too late. Another quiet moment passed. Then, so what do we do? I asked. Garrett looked at me. Not rushed. Not pressured. Just steady. We take it slow, he said. We don't label anything yet. I raised an eyebrow. That sounds like something you saw in a movie. He smirked a little. Maybe. But I mean it, he added. No pressure. No expectations. We just figure it out. I considered that. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was honest. And if you wake up tomorrow and decide this was a mistake? I asked. He didn't hesitate this time. Then I'll tell you. I nodded slowly. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I said. Okay. Because as much as I wanted certainty, as much as I wanted guarantees, that's not how this worked. And if I was being honest, I didn't want to walk away either. Garrett smiled slightly. Not teasing. Just real. Come here, he said quietly. I hesitated for half a second, then leaned in. This time, the kiss was softer, slower, less about shock, more about understanding. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I realized something. This wasn't the ending. It was the start of something neither of us expected. Something messy, complicated, but real. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of that. Because whatever happened next, we'd figure it out. Together.